And but when it comes time for the question and answer, we will stop recording so that there's you know, a little bit more freedom for that. And with that, I want to thank Alan Scott for joining us this morning. Captain Alan Scott, U.S. Navy, retired. He is the International Graduate Students Director for the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. Alan retired from the Navy in 2007 after a 26-year career that encompassed operational aviation, flight test engineering, and aerospace acquisition and systems engineering assignments. He flew some amazing missions, tested anti-submarine warfare, electronic, surveillance. Anyway, we're very, very pleased that he is coming to speak with us today, and looking forward to what you have to tell us, Alan. Also, if you would mute yourselves until the question and answer period, that would be helpful. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to.
Thanks very much, Linda. It's wonderful to be here. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to present to the forum today. I was thinking, you know, it's interesting for a lot of us. I think our lives with the community and the church and our work lives are often very separate, and it's kind of nice in a way to have the opportunity to have those parts of my life at least come together in this instance. So appreciate the opportunity. I was fortunate during my Navy career to do a lot of interesting things. And one of them was to come here to Monterey as a student at the Naval Postgraduate School back a ways back. I won't talk about how long ago that was. I was fortunate enough to meet my wife, Martine, here. And so we had a strong pull to come back here to Monterey at the end of my Navy career, which I was very, very fortunate and blessed to do. So I retired here from active duty at my last assignment at the postgraduate school, was able to find a civilian position and also joined the Good Shepherd community, which has been wonderful. Today, what I'd like to do is share a little bit about our international graduate program at the Naval Postgraduate School. I became the director of the program about 6 years ago, and it's been a very interesting and a little bit of a departure for me. I was mostly in aviation and aerospace and engineering. I did some work with some of our international partners during my career, but there came a point where I was looking for something different, and I definitely got it. So with that, I'll launch into this. With the government, you know, we can't do anything without PowerPoint. So I hope you'll indulge me. I'll use PowerPoint here because that's how we function. Another caution I would make is that after almost 40 years in the military and government, I tend to speak in acronyms. Just another thing that comes as a product of living in that world. So I will try my best to not to explain acronyms or not use acronyms, but if at the end you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to ask. So I will try to advance my slides here. Got a little bit of a hang up. Let's try this again. Okay. Hopefully you can at least, so I won't do this in slideshow because it looked like it was hanging up a little bit. So I'll start out just with a little bit of background because I know that not everybody may be familiar with the Naval Postgraduate School here in Monterey. So hopefully you'll be seeing a picture here of the campus. As you can see, it really is a beautiful campus. And for those of us that live in the local area, you know that it's a wonderful spot there that the Navy has for our postgraduate school. And the picture there is of the main headquarters building, which is the old Hotel Del Monte. It was built in actually 1880, the first time. It was built by the railroad magnates that were trying to build a destination for people to use their railroads to come. So they had a railroad line that came down from San Francisco and ended right there at the postgraduate school or at the Hotel Del Monte. And this was a destination resort. And it was immediately incredibly successful and attracted all kinds of Hollywood celebrities and the rich and famous presidents like Teddy Roosevelt and stars at the time, Charlie Chan, Johnny Weissmuller. And unfortunately, it promptly burned down in 1887. It was a wooden Victorian structure. So it was rebuilt. And then it burned down again in the early 1920s, and it was rebuilt again. And after the second fire, they got smart and they built it instead of a wooden Victorian structure. They built the current Spanish revivalist structure with concrete. So we have the beautiful building that we have now. The Navy occupied the hotel during World War II and established a pre-flight training school there during the war. And then afterwards, the property was owned by Samuel Morse at the time, who's many know in the local community as a huge influence in the Monterey Peninsula area. And he established what is now Pebble Beach. The 17-mile drive actually started at the steps of the Hotel Del Monte. And so at that point, the Navy bought the property outright. Samuel F.B. Morse moved his operations to Pebble Beach. And the Navy in 1951 moved the Naval Postgraduate School here. And the postgraduate school was originally started in 1909 at the Naval Academy in Annapolis to try to develop, at that point, technology was advancing and the Navy realized they needed more advanced education. I think I might have dropped out there for a sec. Linda, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Alan.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't. I think the internet was a little unstable at some point.
Okay.
Can you
Thank
try?
you. Yeah, I think I dropped off for a second.
Okay.
So so advancing to current time, NPS has been at this site here in Monterey since the 1950s. NPS is established as the Navy's graduate school, offer primarily
Alan, you dropped off again and we're not seeing your shared slides.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we have a pretty unstable internet here connection. Okay. Lee, am I back?
I can hear you and I see your thumbnail, but I don't see the shared presentation.
Okay. Well, hopefully will reappear here. Unfortunately, this is the hazard. Kids at home in school simultaneously with trying to do things at work. So I'll continue. Hopefully the slides will come back. NPS offers well over 40 different graduate curricula across a wide variety of different subject areas, ranging from national security affairs, management, computer science, cyber, engineering and applied sciences. Really, and our primary mission is educating U.S. naval officers to enable them to function in a very technologically advanced arena and develop the critical thinking skills that are needed to support our operations. But in that process, of course, there's a realization that we operate in a joint world in the military, and also a coalition and allied environment. And so NPS has really grown to be a Department of Defense and international entity. And so that's really borne out by the attendance that we have. And if you can see the slide, we've got a diagram here that shows the demographics of our student body. We typically have about 1,500 students on board at any given time. Actually, about only 40% of those are U.S. Navy officers, about 600 at any given time. They are joined by a couple hundred Marine Corps officers, about the same number roughly generally of Army officers, around 100 Air Force officers, a few Coast Guard, and then some government civilians, particularly in areas like cyber, which is such an important issue these days. And then all of those U.S. military personnel are joined typically by about anywhere from 150 to, in the past, over 200 international officers from anywhere to 40 to 50 different countries. And our partners around the world have realized that NPS offers some great advantages from an education and research standpoint, the ability to focus on defense and security related topics, and work with U.S. officers. So that has become a real attraction, and we like that as well. We like to encourage the development of the relationships, and that's a big part of what we are here to do. It's not only about the education, but it's about developing relationships with our partners and allies, with like-minded nations, to enhance the security of both the United States and around the world. So hopefully the next slide is showing up. It's a snapshot of our typical international student population. And NPS operates on a quarter system. So we have every 3 months, we have a graduation every 3 months, and this is a year-round operation. And our students are paid to go to school, so they don't get summer breaks. They get a couple weeks off at Christmas. They get a couple weeks off during the summer, and otherwise they are working hard. And the programs are very challenging. In fact, we sometimes have students come in, and many of them, the younger officers have been deployed, particularly in recent years, to Iraq, Afghanistan. Many of them have seen some pretty intense combat operations. And it's a great opportunity for them to come back and reconnect with their families and be in a less difficult, environment from an operational standpoint. But then they trade the challenges of, those challenges with a pretty demanding academic environment, and they soon find themselves studying day and night. And we sometimes have to tell them, hey, you need to, it's okay if you get a B+ instead of an A-. Just, spend time with your family, rejuvenate, and so on. So Anyway, our international population there is typical. We have, as I mentioned, been up over 200 at any given time. In recent years, we're at mercy of current issues and geopolitical issues throughout the world. We have had impacts, for example, with the breakdown of relationships. We used to have about 40 students from Turkey. Turkey was a very strong partner with us. They, after attempted coup in 2016, all of those Turkish students were recalled. And that was a very interesting time for us to counsel those students and help them determine what to do. Also Pakistan, we typically historically had 15 or so students from Pakistan. The US a couple of years ago cut off security cooperation efforts with them. So we lost all those students immediately. So we are, there's one of the things that makes my job very interesting is the variety of issues that I have to deal with, and some of them, ranging into the diplomatic realm. At one moment I'll be helping a student who's experienced identity fraud. And then in the next moment, I'll be on the phone with the defense attaché in Pakistan or the senior military representative at the Department of State dealing with, an initiative that they want to promote to try to enhance the relationship between our countries. So a couple of the interesting observations I'll make here, as you can see, we've been having additional interest from countries in the Asia Pacific. Not surprisingly, due to challenges in that region with China. A lot of engagement there. Also within the Baltic region and Scandinavia, with the countries there. Sweden, for example, just increased their defense budget by 50% because of concerns they have in the region. So all these things, are very interesting from an international relations standpoint, and working with our partner countries to help assist them in building their capacity, as well as trying to develop those and strengthen those relationships. All right, so a little bit more about our students, and hopefully you'll be seeing the next slide here. This is a group of some of our students who graduated this past fall quarter, so they graduated in December. We had about 30 graduates in that group, and you can see they range from a wide variety of countries, and I've highlighted a few of them here. The range of cultures and countries that we get to interact with is really fascinating, and I love that part of the job. These officers, as you can imagine, are the cream of the crop from their countries. I'll talk a little bit more about how they come here in the funding, but a lot of the countries, more countries than you would think, actually pay for the education versus the US supporting the countries. And it's not cheap for a country to send a student here to Monterey. Not only the living cost, the tuition is fairly reasonable, I think, but all in all, it's a fairly large sum. But they want to do that because of the quality of the education, as well as the opportunity to interact with our US students and our faculty. So we have students here from Nigeria. The gentleman on the left was one of our students from Nigeria who earned several awards. I should also say that a lot of these students, every graduation, many of them are up there winning some of the graduation awards because they're so sharp. Young lady from Australia, officer from Niger, two gentlemen there from Georgia. An interesting one, the one on the right, individual on the right, his mother went to the Naval Postgraduate School about 15 years ago. And now the son is here. He works for the Georgian Security Services. And as you can imagine, we have quite a few students from Georgia and the Ukraine come for cybersecurity type programs. And his mom happens to be the Assistant Minister of Defense of Georgia now. So kind of an interesting, not only the standpoint of where she's achieved what she's achieved in her country, and then now she sent her son here for a master's degree. And then the gentleman below, one from Bahrain, the Bahrain Navy, one from the Philippines. And another comment I would make is that normally every graduation, of course, there's a large graduation ceremony. We have a 1,500 seat auditorium at NPS, and every 3 months we have a full graduation ceremony. And there with the US students, there could be anywhere from 200 to 400 graduates at any quarter. And then we also have a separate international graduate luncheon that my office hosts to recognize the international graduates separately, and particularly because of the challenges that they face coming here from their countries, most of them earning a graduate degree in a language that's not their native language. Very challenging. And it's a nice opportunity for us to get together. Unfortunately, with COVID, all that has gone out the window. Everything's virtual. And our photographer has become very creative at patching together group pictures. That's actually a selection of 5 or 6 pictures that he's patched together on top. And you can see there's the front steps of the Hotel Del Monte. There's actually not that many pillars in the building, but when you put it all together, that's what happened. So, working with these students is really one of the highlights of my job that I've found. Some wonderful folks. I would say that, of course, there are challenges. We do occasionally have academic issues. It can be very challenging, graduate programs in a foreign language for these students. But all in all, they are tremendous. So a little bit more from the international program standpoint. As I mentioned, the students come here for the education, but we also are really interested in developing those relationships, connecting our international students with our US students. They go to class together. Normally a lot of them live in the same housing areas at La Mesa or at Fort Ord. So they develop long-term relationships. And there have been studies that show that this is a really effective way of developing connections with our partner countries. One of the other things we do is we have a program called the Field Studies Program that provides trips for our international students. So one element of that is a course that we require them to take that introduces US government, democracy, human rights issues, rule of law, free enterprise, all the those tenets of US society to try to enhance and promote those kind of philosophies with our various countries. And then that program includes trips where we send the students to various locations. We do a couple of trips to Washington, DC every year. We take them to Yosemite, a weekend in Yosemite to see one of our premier national parks, Sacramento to visit the seat of state government, local trips just with to Colton Hall to talk to the mayor of Monterey and the city manager, just to expose them to all aspects of American life. And you can see the picture there is a snapshot of some of our graduates, and this dates back to Afghanistan. But those connections then can last can carry forward into, you know, the operational world. The next slide just talks a little bit about my office, the International Graduate Programs Office. So we're responsible really for the end-to-end process of bringing our international students in, making sure they're taken care of while they're here, and making sure that they have a good experience and are successful in their studies, make those connections with our US officers and our faculty, and then head home with a positive impression of the United States, and you know, become stronger allies in the future. I should mention that this is not just an NPS thing. This is part of what we call the US Security Cooperation Education and Training Program. There are a lot of other organizations in the US. Each service has a war college that also hosts US, or rather international students. NPS is actually the largest from an educational standpoint. We do a lot of pilot training and things like that as well within the Air Force and the Navy. But NPS from an international student standpoint hosts more international students than any other Department of Defense schoolhouse, as we call ourselves. Another interesting aspect to this, so I should say tons of regulations. I've got a 3-inch thick manual that tells us what we can and can't do as far as our international students. It's the government, and the bureaucracy can be very challenging sometimes. I tell our international students during their orientation that we try hard to say yes when they have requests, but sometimes the rules, the regulations get in our way. One interesting aspect of this is the funding that supports these students. We're probably one of the rare entities in the military that actually brings in money. About 3/4 of our students are actually paid for by their country. The countries see the value in sending their students here to NPS. So through foreign military sales, the countries pay the tuition, and then they pay their students living allowances directly here. And then the remaining 25% are split amongst US grant programs that support the education of students from countries where we want to increase our connections. We want to develop those relationships. So there's a Department of State program that we work with called IMET, International Military Education and Training. And then there's a Defense Department program called the Regional Defense Fellowship Program. And that's real interesting because that gets again into the diplomatic arena, working with the Department of State on which countries we want to work with in this sense. You know, dealing with some of the geopolitical issues that are going on right now. So a very interesting aspect of my work. And then, you know, the International Graduate Programs Office, our role is to work with our partner nations, work with our embassies and our defense attaches in our partner nations to bring in the students. We handle the admissions of the international students. I can tell you I have seen transcripts from more universities and institutions around the world than I can count. And we have to figure out how to convert grades from you name the country to a US 4.0 scale and see if a student's qualified. They also have to meet language standards. We have language screening that they're required to take. So we handle all that. We make sure that they get the embassies in their countries. US embassies are responsible for making their arrangements to get here. Once they're here, we assist them with housing, all the myriad kind of administrivia, as we call it, of getting ID cards, getting they get a financial identification number so they can get a bank account. All of those little details our office handles. We handle that field studies program that I mentioned. And then a very important part of what we do is to set up a sponsor program where our US students sponsor our international students and make sure that they are taken care of, have everything they need, answer their questions, and so on. So, so some of the things, just to highlight some of the things we do to support these students. While they do have, they take a test called the Test of English as a Foreign Language, the TOEFL. But you know, it can still be very challenging, and the language issues can be challenging. So we have an English language instructor. Most of you are probably, or many of you are familiar with the Defense Language Institute here in Monterey. The Monterey branch of that teaches foreign languages. Well, there's a similar branch in San Antonio, Texas, that teaches English for our international partners. So we have an instructor from San Antonio who is actually detailed here to Monterey for about 3 years at a time, and then they turn over and we get a replacement. So as you can imagine, that's a pretty coveted position for the folks in San Antonio to try to get that position. So we've had some great English instructors. We also have a relationship with the Monterey Adult School, through which is part of the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, for an ESL program for our spouses to help them. The spouses, most of these students come with families. They can range anywhere from younger lieutenants, Navy lieutenants or Army captains, to more senior Navy captains. The captain thing is always confusing. Different levels of captain between the services, or Army or Air Force colonels. So many come with families, and their families may not speak English as well, their spouses in particular. So that's a very helpful program for the spouses. And of course, the kids, they're integrated into the local school districts. Many of them go to, at the elementary school level, go to La Mesa Elementary, or Colton Middle, or Monterey High. But they're spread throughout the peninsula. We have good friends that were in our school district, and our son and the son of a Danish officer became very close buddies because they went to school together for the period of time that the Danish family was living out in this area. So, so the families, the connections, making sure the families are well taken care of is another important aspect of this. The sponsor program that I mentioned, we have a number of clubs and volunteer groups that raise funds for social activities and events. Our students come here virtually with suitcases with their clothes and no furniture, and so they rent homes or they rent the military housing in our military housing areas. Those are unfurnished, so they need furniture. So we have a volunteer group that maintains a furniture storage facility to help them with that. We have an international club that's sponsored by our NPS Foundation. As part of that, we have language circles. We have US officers that are foreign area officers, and they are in career paths that develop them to be the defense attaches and representatives of our military in our various partner countries. Many of them go to the Defense Language Institute here in Monterey for language training. And then they often go to NPS for a master's degree in regional affairs in the region that they will serve. Well, while they're in their master's program, a lot of times their language skills will atrophy. So we have these language circles, and we have about 10 or 12 of them, different languages. And it's an opportunity for our US officers with language skills to interact with the international officers who speak the same languages. And they can spend a little time speaking in English, then a little time speaking in the foreign language, develop more relationships and help each other out. So that's been really successful. And then finally, we've developed some additional programs to take the students on tours up to Silicon Valley and visit visit companies up there and develop relationships with some of our industry partners. So hopefully I can get the next slide up here. Just a few pictures here of our a couple of our trips up to the Silicon Valley. We have relationships with companies up there. We've visited companies like Palo Alto Networks and Juniper Networks, you know, and cybersecurity. Again, network security is a huge area of interest. And, you know, the thought is that these are additional connections that are beneficial. The other two pictures are pictures of one of our trips to Washington. We take the groups of students, and again, that is funded as part of the program, mostly by the countries that are paying tuition. And we expose them, you know, to a lot of the sites in Washington, visit the Capitol, the White House, the Pentagon. The lower right picture is Gettysburg. We take them to Gettysburg and do a very fascinating tour there, all to expose them to, you know, the good and the bad of US history. And we try to give them a realistic picture. Just a couple more here. Picture of our spouses language group there at the top, two pictures. And then we have, you know, interactions with the community. The Monterey Kiwanis Club presents awards every year to our top international students. And then the picture on the bottom right is really interesting. Several years ago, we were approached by the Consul General from South Korea in San Francisco, and Korea was interested in recognizing our veterans from the Korean War. So they got in touch with local congressional office, and at this point it was still Sam Farr. And they set up a presentation ceremony at CSUMB, and they invited virtually every Korean War vet in the area to a presentation. And they asked that our Korean officers, we had about a dozen at the time, present medals to all of our veterans. I'm sorry, there wasn't a dry eye in the place, and I'll still kind of get emotional about it. Very moving ceremony, expressing the appreciation of Korea. So I've had, you know, some unique moments like that. Sorry, get caught by surprise there. And then finally, last thing I wanted to cover was International Day. I told you, you know, the campus at NPS is very neat. When I was a student there, it was a completely open campus. I was in my apartment in downtown Monterey on Larkin Street. I could jump on my bike, ride down the hill, and be there in 5 minutes, riding straight through the gate. Anybody could walk through the gate. It was completely open. It's not quite like that today. After 9/11, the campus was completely closed. So there's not very many opportunities for community members to go on the campus. The one time of year that there really is an opportunity in normal situations, in non-COVID situations, is International Day. We open up the campus to the community, and all of our international students get together and put on displays for their countries. So typically we'll have 25 to 30 different booths and some incredible food. And they sell small plates. It's a fundraiser that so they can then use that the proceeds for social events. But it's a great day, wonderful opportunity to experience the food and cultures of our partner countries, and incredibly successful. Unfortunately, it's been on hold. We normally do this in April. Couldn't do it this past year. Won't be able to do it again in April. We are keeping our fingers crossed that we will be able to do that again. As you can imagine, tables full of food like that these days would not be something we would be doing. So hopefully in the future, we will be able to do that. So just wrap up here, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions. NPS, I think, is one of those hidden gems. People know about it, know it's here, but really don't know the impact that it has, not only from a US standpoint with the education of our military officers, but also from an international standpoint and the impact that we've had. So we've had a lot of senior military personnel that have passed through NPS, earned master's degrees, and applied that to the benefit of our country. My last slide, just a few examples. And one thing we have a really hard time of is keeping track of all of our alumni because there are so many. And if I had more resources, one of the challenges I have is just limited resources to be able to do everything we have to do, because this job I could put in 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and feel like I haven't done everything I should be doing. One of those things I'd like to be doing more is tracking and maintaining engagement with our alumni. But this is just an example of a few of our international alumni, starting at the top with Lele Chikavani, who I mentioned is the Deputy Minister of Defense of Georgia. Brazil, senior level of Brazil, Chief of the French Navy, Turkey, Greece, and so on. And, with 123 different countries represented amongst our graduates, the list just goes on and on. And I think, the impact there is pretty substantial as far as developing those relationships where something happens. One of our senior officers can call up somebody and say, hey, I knew you at NPS, and let's talk about this situation. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Hopefully the slides came through okay. Sorry about the internet problems. Hopefully it was mostly coherent, and I will try to bring up the chat here.
And we're going to stop recording now.